Saturday, March 5th. The Good Morning Guys decided to do a spoiler cast for the Batman. And that is my Robert Pattinson impression. You're welcome.
It's good. It's good. I like it.
If you say so. Uh,
I mean, you can't go wrong.
yeah. Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to this very special spoiler cast edition of the Good Morning Guys podcast. I am your host, Mr. Marc Boucher. With me, of course, is my good friend and co-host, Patrick Novosel. How are you, sir?
I am vengeance.
Nice.
I am also Patrick Novosel, but I'm also vengeance.
Hey, vengeance! Yeah, man. So we are going to be talking specifically about The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Andy Serkis, Colin Farrell, just a A-list cast of
Don't forget
actors.
about who plays Falcone.
Oh, yeah, John Turturro.
John Turturro. Man, he's so good.
So good. But yeah, we are going to be talking quite a bit about the Batman, what our impressions were. We'll be talking some spoilers in just a little bit. But first off, we're going to talk a little bit about our non-spoiler impressions of the movie. So, Patrick, I will let you go first. What did you think of the movie?
Oh, okay. So when I heard that this movie was 3 hours long, I'm like, yes, give me 3 hour comic book movies. I don't like the 2 hours because I feel like it's being rushed.
Yeah.
And the way that they made this movie, it needed to be 3 hours. Otherwise, it would have felt rushed. We got a lot of exposition. The pacing was just so good. I have some thoughts about the pacing, but it was not a detriment to the story, not a detriment to the movie. I just have some thoughts on it. But I love the movie. It was like an 8 episode Netflix series where you get you're not going to get to the end, the whole center of the story until later, until like the 6th or 7th episode. So and it was fantastic the way they did it. And with Netflix shows, sometimes they're slow and they ramp up, and it's the way I felt with this. I was like, yes, we're getting an entire Netflix series on the screen.
We're binging.
It felt like it was a binge. It felt like it was a binge, which is not a bad thing. It's actually what I prefer. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. Music was fantastic. The actors were fantastic. The Batman was fantastic. The characters, the side characters, and the villains, fantastic. It's hard to say anything negative about this movie. I do have some negatives, but overall, this movie was fantastic. Is it the best Batman movie? That not sure. I haven't seen the other Batman movies in quite some time. If I were to, it's in the discussion as one of the best Batman movies. It's hard to compare because the way they did this movie was unlike any other Batman movie,
Yeah.
which was great. Like I'd love to see these comic book movies shown a little differently, directed differently, because we've seen Batman. Batman has had like what, 7 movies or 8 movies right now. So let's do it different, and they did. So I really enjoyed it. I can't really say much more without getting into spoilers, because I want to talk about specifics and things like that. But overall, this movie is a 9.5 out of 10. Not a perfect movie, but a dang good movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, from the resident Batman fan, I guess, if you will,
Yeah.
I have been thoroughly hyped for this movie for quite a while. When they first announced Robert Pattinson being Batman, I was a little concerned, just because the first reaction was, man, they got the guy from Twilight being Batman. and
Right.
and that's, standard reaction. But at the same time, since then he has done several movies and has improved his acting chops over the years. And plus, I always think about anytime they cast somebody for, especially Batman movies. Anytime they cast somebody, this has happened so many times. Like when they cast Michael Keaton as Batman. Michael Keaton was a comedian actor. He was a comedy guy.
He was Mr.
He
Mom.
was Mr. Mom, yeah. And everybody was upset. There was like, petitions and things like that before there was like change.org. Back in the 80s they had like actual physical petitions that they signed.
And they did the same thing with Heath Ledger when
Yep.
he was Joker.
Yep, the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You and A Knight's Tale is going to be the Joker. What the heck?
Right, yeah.
But somebody sees something that we don't.
Yep.
And when they started putting the trailers out for this, I was like, I'm on board. This is the Batman. This is what I need. Excuse me. And so yeah, I was absolutely excited for this movie, and from the get-go, I was so on board. All the characters in this movie are incredible. Robert Pattinson has sold me on being Batman. He does a great, thorough job of being the dark, brooding character. But they had a lot more of an emphasis on the detective side of things, which is nice. Batman is the world's greatest detective. He's commonly referred to in a lot of circles. And they really heavily laid into the detective side of things. They've touched on it in other movies, in other Batman films, but this, they really laid heavy on it, and they really laid heavy on the noir, dark side of things. Like everything is shot. It reminded me of the way that Batman the Animated Series was animated, because they animated all of those movies of those shows by hand on black paper. They didn't use the typical white paper that they normally would for a typical animation sequence. Everything was on black, and that just added to the dark, gritty nature of it. And that's what it felt like with this movie. Paul Dano's Riddler is a Riddler that they needed to go with for this particular movie. For gritty, dark noir, I very much was into the Zodiac Killer style version of Riddler. Everybody all around, all the different characters, like Colin Farrell, just looking at him, you would have no idea that that's Colin Farrell just by looking at him.
No idea. So I saw the movie with my wife, and when he first showed up on screen, I leaned over to her and I whispered, I was like, "Hey, that's Colin Farrell." And she's like, "No way." And so I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like this, like it didn't look like him. It didn't sound like him, didn't move like him." And I'm just like, they really need to get Colin Farrell? Like what, like you were like, hey, they saw something in Robert Pattinson. Did they really see something in Colin Farrell? Because it doesn't look like him and doesn't sound like him.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like him at all, which is pretty impressive, because dude has a thick Irish accent.
Sure does. Yeah.
And he's got the full on Brooklyn, hey sweetheart kind of thing. And yeah, props to the makeup and design, prosthetic design team for whoever did his makeup and stuff, because yeah, completely unrecognizable as the Penguin. But they all did a fantastic job. This movie for me, if I can make a definitive ranking, in fact, I think I did actually. I've made a definitive ranking of all the Batman movies. This movie is a very, very close second for me in terms of Batman movies. I think Dark Knight is a little bit higher for me still. But this is dang close. Like this could easily jump past and be number one. And yeah, I'm absolutely with you with 3-hour superhero movies. As long as, everything actually makes sense to the plot of the movie,
sure,
and moves things along, then absolutely 3-4 hour movie, give it to me. I'm absolutely into it. So I would give this movie 9.5 batarangs out of 10.
All right, nice. Same score.
Yep. So we have both given our impressions of the Batman. It's time to hop over the spoiler wall. If you have not seen the Batman yet, you should put us on pause for a little bit and go see the movie. See it
Go
twice
see
if
it.
you want to.
Yeah, go see it twice, maybe 3 times if you're feeling so inclined.
Yep. And then come on back and hang out with us when you're done, because we're about to spoil the heck out of this thing.
I am spoilers. We are spoilers. We are Groot and all that. Yes.
The answer's spoilers.
I am Groot.
Wow.
I see. Anyways.
But yeah, so we are over the spoiler wall, and from the get-go, like there's no credits other than this big marquee flash of the Batman, and then immediately we're into it, and you're immediately unsettled because you're seeing this immediate first person POV kind of thing. Somebody's like spying on this obviously very affluent rich couple in their mansion. You see this kid dressed up as a ninja, and you see the parents walk up, and he's got a jack-o'-lantern Halloween candy bucket. I'm like, okay, we're set around Halloween. And I knew that this movie was going to be very heavily based around a couple of different comic book series. There's Batman Earth 1 by Jeff Johns, which is fantastic. I would recommend it. And also a classic series of books called Batman The Long Halloween. I believe that is Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, obviously from the get-go, you're like very unsettled. And then we get to that scene where, I've forgotten his name. Mitchell. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. And then when you say it, it's like Don Mitchell Jr. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah. Mayor Don Mitchell, he's up for re-election up against Villarreal, and he's not doing so hot, and he's sitting there watching this debate, and you're focused, and it's dark, and all of a sudden just there's Riddler just hanging out right there in the background, and I was just immediately creeped out from the get-go. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't move. He's not making a sound. The mayor has no idea he's there, and then all of a sudden, just beast mode, just starts going to town on his head, yeah, this is a very different Riddler, very very modern, very like serial killer, very heavily influenced on the Zodiac killer, type of Riddler.
Very stark contrast to the Jim Carrey Riddler.
Yeah, I would say so. They decided not to err on the jokey side, the jokey,
yeah,
ham over fist kind of,
which worked for the movie.
Yeah,
like so they were deep. They were like, they went all in. This is what the movie is going to be, and the Riddler was the best villain for this movie.
Yeah,
hands down. Great.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed Paul Dano's take.
Now, the only thing with the Riddler that I thought they would have fixed when they watched the trilogy of Batman with Bane and the Mask was like, man, it's been a couple years, and people have the fire rises, brother. So it's like we've for the past 2 years in the pandemic, you thought we would be able to be used to people talking through masks, and I'm like, man, I can't understand him maybe 20% of the time. Yeah. And when he was on, I think later in the movie, when he was on the news and they had the subtitles, I was like, yes, I need subtitles.
Thank you.
Continue with the subtitles. Like, if when this movie comes on HBO Max and I'm gonna have you watching it again, obviously I'm gonna be putting on the subtitles, because there's definitely some words and things I missed while he was talking through because it wasn't clear. Yeah. It did sound muffled, like he was talking through a mask. But I just wish I had more subtitles. I wish I had the option to put subtitles on.
Yep,
you know?
absolutely. I get you. Yeah, and I benefited from a second viewing of this because I've seen
Y-
it twice now.
Yeah.
I saw it on Tuesday at an early IMAX fan screening event, which was incredible. And then I saw it today as of this recording.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely benefited from a second viewing because I could definitely pay attention more to the dialogue. And I mean, the first time I watched it, I caught most of it, but yeah,
Right.
I can understand some of it was like a little on the muffled side, especially early on in the movie. He's got some sort of like digitizer voiceover over his real voice, so he sounds a lot lower than he really is. Um,
Yeah.
and so that makes it even more difficult. He's got a mask
Mm-hmm.
on and he's got his voice masked. So I definitely understand that. Um, One thing that's important to touch on is like we do not we don't get an origin story in this movie. There we
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we don't get a Thomas and Martha Wayne being killed. We don't get the early days of Batman. We're automatically it's second year of him being Batman. We're already in it. Gotham for they still don't know 100% what to make of him, but they know of this vigilante known as the Batman. And he's in his second year, um, and
And you can tell he's like this is a sequel slash prequel, because the prequel meaning we've gotten this is the earliest Batman we've seen in the movies before as far as age is concerned, and then a sequel because I feel like they've skipped season one
yeah,
or the first when he became Batman, because they never got the origin story. They just like we understand, we've seen, we know Batman, that his parents die and he becomes Batman. Like we get it. He's got a lot of money. We don't need to see it again. Just
yeah,
like the way they did it with Spider-Man, and they're like, you know what? We don't need an origin story. We're just gonna go straight into it. Like the origin story was really in like Civil War. So
yeah,
like even that was we passed it because we know Uncle Ben dies. We get it. We don't need to see it again.
yeah.
Let's get right into it. And so that's what I really loved about this movie is like, okay, we get it. They know their audience. We're not going to waste time. This is a 3-hour movie. They could have done an origin story,
Yeah.
but I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Matt Reeves has spoken about like when he wanted to make this Batman film, he's like the whole origin story, the whole Thomas and Martha Wayne scene, he's like it's been done by so many people so well. Why do I need to do it again?
Mm-hmm.
We can just jump in. You know who Batman is. You know who Bruce Wayne is. You know his background. Let's just jump into it, shall we? And I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I really do appreciate that because that just gives more time to let's focus on a standalone Batman story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from the moment that and it's interesting how they decided to go the narrative route where they have Robert Pattinson, kind of doing narration over at the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, because immediately when I saw that, I could see like if you've ever read a comic which usually has maybe Bruce's internal monologue or something like that, I immediately just started seeing the speech bubbles start popping up in my
Yeah.
mind. I'm like, this is just like a comic, man. This is beautiful. Um, and what was interesting was that most of this movie, like 90%, maybe 80 or 90% of the movie, he is Batman in this movie. We get
Yes.
very little Bruce Wayne.
And I'm glad
Yeah.
that we got 90%. And that's really, I mean, I want Batman.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of Robert Pattinson. I'm not a fan of Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne
Yeah.
at this and at this age, because he is still hurt over his parents. He's not getting any answers of who killed who and who they were. And so he's just like, he's got a lot of unanswered questions that are in his life. And you can see that he's got his like the quote unquote emo Bruce Wayne or the teen angst Bruce Wayne. I totally get it. The biggest thing was his hair. Like I couldn't do his hair. Like he's got enough hair, slick it back.
Yeah.
But it was the way they when I saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, this is, fix your hair. And so when I watched the movie, I'm like, this makes sense. Like the whole look, the whole act as Bruce Wayne, it totally makes sense. It's like I said, when it's non-spoilers, it was like a lot of these negatives are, not a detriment to the story that was being told.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just things that like, they could have done this better. Um,
Yeah.
but I I get the concern about there not being very much Bruce Wayne, just because um, Bruce Wayne is the cover. It's always been the cover for him. He's supposed to be the eccentric billionaire kind of, suave guy. That's
Right.
supposed to be the cover for people not suspecting that he's Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they decided they didn't necessarily want to go that route right now. Now, what I could see
Right. Yeah.
is further down the road, especially when we first meet Alfred, and he comes into the Batcave, which we'll come back to the Batcave in a second. But Alfred points out, like, he's saying, oh, we've got a meeting here at Wayne Tower with the accounting department for Wayne Enterprises, and he's like, here now, why? He's like, because I couldn't get you to come there. And he's like, you don't get this. Like, if you keep down this road, you will have nothing left. So
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about, like, the logistics of being Batman, the money and things that he's putting into being Batman.
Right. Right.
And so he's got to be a lot better about covering that.
Yeah. And this is a quote unquote origin story of Bruce Wayne,
Yeah,
because this movie, he's a recluse.
yeah,
He's not shown his face. It's the first time he's shown his face in quite some time, because when he gets out later in the movie, they're like, is that Bruce Wayne? Like, what? I haven't seen you in, countless months or years or whatever it is.
yeah,
So it totally makes sense that he's unkempt
yeah,
in this movie.
yeah, yeah. I'm right there with you with the hair. I wish they would have gone a different hairstyle for him, but
But like I said, the hairstyle, even though it was terrible, it made sense for the story, because he's not the Bruce Wayne we know. He's not the playboy. He's not the philanthropist. Philanthropist? Is that a word?
philanthropist.
Philanthropist. I knew that didn't sound right. And so it's like he's not the guy, because even like later in the movie, they're like, hey, your parents were good philanthropists or whatever it is. And so like, and because he's been focused on being the Batman rather than being a public figure for Wayne Enterprises. So yeah, it was as much as I hated it, it made sense, and which I respected.
Yeah, he doesn't care at all about his persona, about his public image right now. He's like, I
Right.
don't care what happens to me. Basically, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
this what I'm doing is my legacy for my parents,
Right.
and any whatever things else, I don't care. So he's very much in Batman mode throughout this entire movie. Um, so going from there, I mean, we're into very much like a introduced to Gotham City, very modern look, but obviously very dumpy looking at the same time. It's rampant with drugs and things like that,
Crime.
crime, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you've got this wave of murders that this serial killer starts pulling off, and then immediately, we're introduced to the Batman. First off, in that scene with the thugs, in
Yes.
yeah, when they're coming off the train. Um, my favorite thing about the way that they've introduced Batman in several scenes in this movie is the darkness and just hearing the boots coming and just this ominous, like, clink,
The fear. Yeah.
yeah, they're really touched on, like, these criminals don't know where he is, and that's the element that he uses the most. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I can't be everywhere, but they don't know where I am. and
Right.
that's the biggest thing. And yeah, when he comes out of the shadows, at first they're like they don't know what to make of this guy, and then he's full on Batman, just beats the crap out of all those guys. Um, the way that his gadgets and stuff are set up are really interesting in this movie. I think that's the first time I've seen, like, for example, the grappling gun come out of his glove almost.
Yeah.
That's different. Typically, he would pull that off of his belt or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But that introductory scene of him just going to town on these criminals is insane.
And so this scene reminded me a lot of the Arkham series
Yeah,
when you are fighting multiple thugs at once. Like it looked like the thugs, the battle, it was just like a battle with thugs in Arkham series. And that's what I really like, that because that a lot of the rest of the movie is very it reminded me a lot of the Arkham games as far as like the detective work too. And Kevin Conroy is my favorite Batman
yeah,
in the Arkham series. And this one this Batman's close second as far as my favorite Batman characters because of the detective work in this movie.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And immediately, in the first murder, we get introduced to the dynamic between Batman and Lieutenant Gordon, because he is not commissioner yet at this point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Played by Jeffrey. Oh gosh, Jeffrey Wright, I believe. I hope I said his name right. I think it's Jeffrey
I
Wright.
think that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a fantastic actor.
yeah. I've seen him in several other movies. The one I remember him the most from actually um, is the Hunger Games. He was actually in that movie. Also,
Mhm.
he played a Watu the Watcher in What If. He was the voice of the Watcher.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, he has done the voice of Batman as well. And he did,
Really?
yeah, for HBO Max. They did a series of like old school '40s radio serial type of episodes of Batman.
Huh.
And yeah, he's the voice of Batman in
That's
those.
cool.
He
That's
does
cool.
a great job. But yeah, love his acting in this movie. But yeah, just from the get go, you get the dynamic between him and Gordon, and you also get like how much the police is not okay with him.
So are you talking about the scene where Gordon is walking down the hallway and the hallway is lined with policemen
Yeah,
and then Batman is walking right behind him. And this scene is like 2 minutes long, and which goes a couple things. This movie is slow, and it's interesting slow.
hmm
But this pace right here, like very slow walking. Batman passes like 15 police officers, and they get to the end of the hallway, and the last police officer is like, "Wait." He puts his hand on his chest and says, "Wait, you're not supposed to be here." It's like, what do you mean? There's like, what about the other 14 other police officers that were just letting them go? And then Commissioner or Lieutenant Gordon turns around slowly, like he didn't notice that this guy just stopped Batman. And then he's like, he's with me. And then, still the police officer has his hand on Batman's chest for a few more seconds, and then he lets go, and then Batman continues to walk slowly. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a slow movie so far.
yeah, I think the way that they wanted to do that was like you have several cops that like they're just staring like they don't know what to make of him. They have
Right.
cops that are like scared of him, don't trust him, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And you get the one guy that's actually got the cojones to actually be like, "Hey, this is police action here. You can't be here. What are you doing?"
No, but yeah, it was just a funny part
It
because
is. It is. I get it.
yeah.
But yeah, you get introduced to that dynamic. You get automatically introduced to the detective element. How much Batman's already looking around at the crime scene, noticing things that not everybody else is noticing. I love the scene where the part where the guy's trying to look at the mayor's body, and he's like trying to come around the front, and he's like trying to get around Batman. He's like, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. I thought this was another, again, reminiscent of the Arkham games, albeit since this is a young Batman, he doesn't have the gadgetry and all that stuff that as far as detective work. He has like that contact that he uses that records everything that he does, and we never really got to see what he sees on his end, if it like things highlight, when you do the detective mode in the Arkham games or whatever. I'm assuming that's what it might have looked like, but we didn't get any of it.
Yeah.
He just uses that. It uploads to the Batcave, and he's able to watch everything back again. But it was really cool how all, he was just like looking at a blood stain that the cops missed. And then like one of the cops comes over and then notices that there's another blood stain, which was just the detective work is slow, and it's just like, what else is he gonna find, and then they find an envelope for the Batman, and again this is slow moving. It takes them like, it feels like 45 minutes to take the card out of the envelope. Like he just looks at it and then slowly takes it out, and then slowly opens it, and then slowly reads it. I'm like, oh my gosh, just move already. Let's go. Oh man. So when I say I give this movie a 9.5 out of 10, the pacing of this movie is fantastic. I love how slow it was, but some parts were just super slow.
That there's where that half point credit went.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's where the half point credit. Yeah, it was like, if it, and really like, it sucks because it's too. I love it and I hate it at the same time. I love the slowness, but there's just many parts in the movie where I'm like, can you just speed it up?
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely. So moving on real quick to Bruce's relationship with Alfred. It's interesting, and this is where a lot of the Batman Earth 1 influence comes in, because Alfred is very much not a butler in this movie for the most part. Like, he kind of is, but he kind of isn't.
Yeah, he's more of like a father figure, because wasn't there like there was like an older lady that was more of the butler,
Doreen,
than he was.
Yeah, he in this movie, and this was kind of this way in Batman Earth 1. He was more of a bodyguard than he was a butler.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
And Alfred actually has British military service experience in this movie. And that's why he knows how ciphers work and things like that. That's how he's able to help Bruce decode the ciphers from the Riddler and things like that. There's a quick line that he gives out, especially in the scene where later on Alfred's in the hospital, and he's talking to Bruce, and he points out, he's like, I could see the fear in your eyes, and there was only so much I could do about that. I could teach you how to fight. Alfred taught Batman how to fight. Mm-hmm. So they definitely went the Earth 1 route with Alfred in this movie, and you can tell there's a relationship there, but it's also kind of standoffish as well, because I still think we're in the early days of Alfred not really sure what to make of this whole Batman thing.
Let's stick with that while we're on that scene in the hospital. Like, talk about an emotional scene. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you did, but I definitely got welled up in that scene, because Alfred was protecting Bruce, and Bruce is like, why didn't you tell me these things? He's like because I never knew for sure, and so he didn't want to tell him. He was too young, and he didn't think he was ready to know either the truth or what was really going on, because he really didn't know. Like, he didn't know what if Falcone killed his dad. He's like, maybe it's a pretty good possibility, but it couldn't be for sure. And so it was just like that moment of both of them just like pouring out their hearts was a scene that I didn't think I would get in a Batman movie.
Yeah.
It was really, really well done. One of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like an entire mixture of emotions there because Alfred immediately he comes out from his coma and he's happy to see Bruce, but then
Right.
Bruce is immediately like, "You lied to me my
Yeah.
whole life." And so for, you know, just to give context, he thinks at this point, and it's interesting the way that they characterize the Waynes in this movie. Again, very Earth One influenced. The fact that the Waynes aren't squeaky clean. They were good people, but they have some dirty laundry,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a situation where it was about to come to light that Martha's mother killed her father, and then killed herself, and that Martha had been in several institutions throughout her life, and things like that. And at that time, Thomas was running for mayor. And so these things came to light, and at first, the way that the story tells you're led to believe that, um, in a moment of desperation, Thomas Wayne went to Carmine Falcone and basically asked him to off this reporter that was threatening to reveal this information.
I
And
think I don't think he said to take care of it,
yeah,
but
well,
not. I don't.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
When they first start talking about it, and like especially when Riddler puts out his little expose on that,
Mm-hmm.
they basically say he hired Falcone
Falcone.
to kill this reporter. Now, Alfred tells him later, no, 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 that's not true. That's not the case. And so that's the misunderstanding. There
Right.
was a moment of weakness there where he basically wanted Falcone to scare, and they, in different versions of the comics and in the movies, they either call him Falcone or Falcone. I think they went with Falcone in this movie, but whatever.
Because it's a rat with wings.
Yeah. So, but in any case, yeah. So you're led to believe that it went one way when really it was a moment of weakness. It was a
Mm-hmm.
mistake to even go to Carmine.
Right.
But when he found out what Falcone did, he was gonna basically confess everything, go to the police, and then you're led to believe that Falcone was actually the one that arranged for the Waynes to be killed.
Right.
But they still left it kind of ambiguous, so
Right.
because Alfred really wasn't sure. But still, interesting way to characterize the Waynes in this, to not make
Mm-hmm.
them as squeaky clean, and to have some inner conflict for Bruce because he's championed his parents his whole life and how they were good members of Gotham society. How his dad wanted to better Gotham with this renewal plan, which actually
Mm-hmm.
plays out into the story later on, and then to find out this information that his father may not have been so good, it really shakes Bruce to the core, in that movie, and I think they did a fantastic job with it. So let's talk a little bit about Zoe Kravitz and her characterization of Catwoman. So what did you think of overall of Zoe Kravitz and how she did in this movie?
I loved her rendition, her characterization as Catwoman, because she wasn't necessarily like, "Hey, I'm Catwoman. I'm like the Michelle Pfeiffer licking cats, Catwoman, eating or drinking milk and all that stuff." Like she drank milk in one scene.
Yeah,
She had cats, but she had. It was weird because you could also see that it was like year one Catwoman,
yeah,
because she had her whole setup. She had her leather outfit that allowed her to do all these things, and then but she's got like a skull cap or a tassel cap that she's like cut out for a mask. It was just like you could tell it was she didn't have the money or whatever to have a legitimate mask.
Early
But
days.
her right, it was the early days for sure. And her both her acting is amazing. I love Zoe Kravitz. She was in another movie that I just watched called Kimmy.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of a play on Alaska. I don't want her to turn on, but she was great in that. And so I saw her. She was fantastic. I think she's my favorite Catwoman of all of them. Like Michelle Pfeiffer and who was the one that was in the Dark Knight trilogy?
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway was awful. Like so. It was easy. It's easy for her to be the best Catwoman. Her fighting was just like she was very limber and very smart, very stealthy, and I loved how because we had 3 hours of her. She was on screen a ton, and so we got a lot of background about her and the reason why she's a part of this because one of her best friends was murdered and killed. So we get a lot of her, and there was a reason for her to be around, and how her storyline intertwined with Batman's story as well. Fantastic. I don't have anything bad to say about Catwoman.
Yeah.
She was really well done. There's no negatives with her at all. She had a reason. She had motive for to be in this movie, the entire movie. Do you have anything that is outside of what they've shown? Is there any negatives with her? Like she was a fantastic side character.
There were a couple of lines that like I was like a little corny to me. Like anytime she would say, honey or baby or something like that, like that felt like a little shoehorned in. But otherwise, like I didn't mind her dialogue. But yeah, she very much had a role to play in this
Mm-hmm.
movie. They served it well, and Catwoman has toted the line many times between like anti-hero and criminal, and I think they did a good job of skirting this line of she marches to the beat of her own drum.
Mm-hmm.
She does what she wants and things like that. There's a bit of the criminal element just because she did steal that bag of money and things like that. But she does have some good intentions, and sometimes Batman unlocks the good intentions in her even when she doesn't want to necessarily. She would go back and forth. Like obviously she helps Batman when she's in was it 44 or 45 below, the club within the club,
Mm-hmm.
and she's down there and she's got the contact lenses in and everything. She's trying to, but at the same time she's trying to find out what happened to her best friend, but she's also helping Batman, and that arc sort of carries on where she has moments of weakness. The time where she steals the money, where she finds Kinsey and she's like beating the crap out of him, and she kicks him off the roof and things like
Yeah,
that.
she says, Batman says something to her like, "Don't be the lie" or something like that. He says something, and she's like, "Too bad, I've already crossed the line." And then she just like kicks him like 300. This is Sparta. Just kicks him, and then Batman was able to save him from falling all
Yeah.
off that roof or whatever. But yeah, she is both back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much a back and forth thing, but ultimately she lands kind of on a good note. Especially towards the end of the movie when she ends up, saving Batman and things like that. So, she's got a little bit of a conscience, but like I've very much enjoyed Zoe Kravitz's take on the
Mm-hmm.
character. She's very much got that sort of edgy nature that Catwoman has. But obviously she's still very much in early days. So Paul Dano's Riddler.
Yeah.
He's still like, even when I watch interviews with Paul Dano, his face creeps me out. Like he has that he has that serial killer type face, very unnerving type of face.
he
And
was he was fantastic. Not only when he had the mask on, he was like crazy insane. And then later on when he's in jail and Batman is talking to him through the the window, and then he's just like, he was yelling, the Batman was yelling, I was like, what did you do? And the first thing I could think of is, why did you say that name? That's the first thing I could think of. I always think about that.
all I can think of is, where were the other drugs going?
What did you do? And the way Paul Dano was like insane and talking, and the way he like would walk around the room like, no, 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 it's like, oof, man, his portrayal of Riddler and portrayal as a villain in general was amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like just watching the quirks that he has. Like it's just classic, like deranged person.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just start this random kind of like reaction, like just physical reaction that somebody with a very deluded mind would have, but at the same time he's very, very methodical. He's all about puzzles and riddles, obviously, and he's very, very crafty as a criminal. I loved the very Seven like nature of this story, and all the crimes, all these
like the thumb drive.
Yeah. What a dad joke in a Batman movie. But I thought it was great when they have to plug in the thumb drive, and it's got like an encryption with a thumbprint.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know what to do here. And Batman's like, why don't you try this? It's like, this guy's hilarious. So Gordon's got to touch this dead thumb to open it, but no.
But some of the with Riddler, he had riddles, and what was difficult for me is like, here's these riddles, and they know them, they know the answers to them like within like half a second. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, like you didn't even give me a chance to even think about it myself. Like there was no like this. Again, this is a 3-hour movie. You could have been like talking out loud and trying to figure out like, what does this mean? It's like, no, they already did this. They just said the answer. I'm like, well, that was quick.
Yeah, well,
it was a very, very disproportionate change of pace for the rest of the movie. Like, yeah, I feel like they should have spent a little bit more time on figuring out what the riddle meant.
I think that was more to just demonstrate Batman and the Riddler kind of going back and forth at each other, proving that Batman has the brain to come up against Riddler, because like for example, the scene with Gil Colson, the district attorney, when he's got the bomb strapped to his neck, and he's got to solve 3 riddles in 2 minutes, and to the average person, he's like, okay, no, say it one more time. Can you say it one more time? Justice, blind, poetic, and Batman's like, justice. It's justice. It's bribes, and he's trying to like be one step ahead of Riddler. But ultimately, Batman failed at that because the one piece of information was the one thing that Gil Colson was hiding back, and so ultimately gets his head blown off at that point. But yeah, each and every one of the situations, like they're almost like from the movie Saw, like with Jigsaw, those types of things, like especially like with the rats, that was highly unsettling.
Do you want to play a game?
Yeah, so very, very, very heavily Jigsaw influenced. But so back to let's go to Colin Farrell's Penguin.
Let's do that.
So obviously we talked quite a bit about how he is basically unrecognizable in this movie.
Yes.
I love the gangster type version of the Penguin. You don't get the like from Batman 66. You don't have him as like a physical like an actual penguin hybrid monster like he did in Batman Returns. He's just like a guy with physical ailments, and things like that. And he his face, like the way his nose is set up and everything, he looks like a bird. Um and things like that. And he's just got that very much that gangster type element to him. He's got the 1920s type of Brooklyn type accent, sweetheart, type of thing. And but I loved his character throughout this movie. You could tell that he was basically a hired thug, kind of waiting in the wings, waiting to find his opportunity to get some comeuppance. And so especially in the scene with the Batmobile chase.
Oh my goodness. What? So this movie is slow, and then we get some little fight scenes, some little action, and then we get the Batmobile scene.
Yeah.
This scene was just fast and furious type of scene.
Yeah.
Like, it was so amazing the way, like the way the Batmobile like starts. It's just like, it feels like it's like a Christine, that movie about the Christine car,
Yeah.
like just sitting back there and just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then when you see the back of the Batmobile and that huge like jet powered engine in the back and just take off after Penguin, and Penguin's got like, he's got a nice car, but it's no Batmobile. And as he's going through traffic and the Batmobile's trying to follow him, but again, this is a dark highway. It's raining, 95% of this movie.
Yeah,
which is like,
it rains a lot in Gotham.
Oh,
Holy crap.
Man, it rains so much. And at one point, my wife, she's like, does it ever stop raining? I'm like, I don't know. They must be in the middle of a monsoon right now, because it doesn't stop raining. But so like they like there's like a couple semis that are coming through, and he goes through, and then there's this big, huge tanker truck, and the Penguin figures out a way to pretty much jackknife this big tanker truck, and it just blows up. And you get this like this view point of Penguin like in the front of the car, and you can see the explosion in the background, and he's like, I got you, ha ha ha, I got you. Like, this was like so well done, so well directed. The way that scene was directed and the shots that they made was really, really good, because I mean, it was dark, so you had to have some sort of shots of it behind and the side and the front of the Batmobile. And then it ends with that shot of Penguin getting so excited that he blew up the entire highway, that there's no way that Batman can get through that. And then all of a sudden he sees in his rearview mirror that the Batmobile just comes flying through the fire.
Yep.
And the explosion. Like, oh my gosh. When you see that, you're like, oh, this is so good. This is Fast and the Furious. and so it was just that scene. Like, I want to see that scene again. Just I want to go see the movie again just for that scene, because it was so well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the way that he comes up on Penguin and just rams, and like that car is just like at least 12, 13 times that thing goes spinning.
Right.
And man, that car is a piece of crap, because those airbags never deployed.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, right. But then he ends up like I said, the scenes and the direction of the shots, like the car was upside down, so the camera was upside down, and you just see that Batman, like you said earlier, the boots hitting the ground, and he was just walking slowly, and then he just like tilts his head upside down, and he's looking at
I thought that part was kind of funny, just because like you would expect in that shot for him to be walking up, and you see like him upside down in the car, and like the shadow of Batman coming up upon him. That to me would have been like the perfect shot. and then
Uh-huh.
you see him duck down.
I was like,
That part was kind of funny to me,
it
but
was like a deleted scene that was added in there.
it would have been even funnier if he just like let out this big smile, like gotcha.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, I absolutely loved that scene with the Batmobile. Loved Colin Farrell's Penguin. They're setting him up. They're setting him up big time, especially with the end of the movie. Now that Carmine Falcone, or at Falcone, whatever.
Wait, hold on. Let's go back before we get off of Penguin real quick.
Sure.
When they have him and he's all tied up and they're trying to get some information out of him, and then they leave and he's like, "What? Let me go!" And then he's like, because his ankles are tied and his hands are tied, and he's kind of like running after them, but he's got a penguin waddle, and I was like, "Ooh, that is a nice touch. That's a nice touch."
Real subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did think that was hilarious that Batman and Gordon just sort of left him there. Like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, Penguin is, they're setting him up for future movies, especially since, obviously with the end of the movie, Carmine Falcone, it's revealed that he is this informant, this rat that had all this information on these high profile people, he was the one that basically set up Sal Maroni to be arrested and all these kind of things, and he gets arrested. And that's how the Riddler gets him to come out into the open and
bring him to the light.
Yep. And takes a rifle shot at him, and Carmine Falcone is dead. And so because of that, Penguin basically gets to take over. But
we didn't get to the point where the whole the Catwoman part where it's like her dad. Is it her dad?
Yeah.
Is Carmine her dad?
Yeah.
Okay, so that whole like her trying to get in there and take him out, it was like that was an intense scene.
Yeah.
Like I felt like because she wasn't able to kill him, even though he ended up dying, like she didn't get that sense of satisfaction of being the one to kill him.
Yeah.
And so that was, I felt like that was a very important part of the movie, and which again, like that was her own storyline that was woven into the movie. And I don't know if that's that's part of one of the series or stories of comic books that where
it is.
Okay, because that was, I am not a comic book reader. I don't know a lot of these other backstories and things like that. So that was, for me, it was a very cool way of getting her into more of the story. So I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I want to say it was the Long Halloween that it very heavily implies that Carmine Falcone is Selena's father.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, the very, very par for the course. It made sense to me at least in this sense, and the way they did it was it absolutely made sense.
Well done. Yeah.
But yeah, so Penguin gets to take over that empire, and there gets to be a major power grab. So let's talk a little bit about the I guess the end game, if you will, of this movie. They go through all of these murders, and the Riddler is trying to present this point that there's all this corruption and deception in Gotham, and that Gotham is this major cesspool of crime and disease and drugs and all of these things, and then Riddler finally gets arrested at the end of the movie, which, like, when they find him in the diner at the end of the movie, again, he turns around and looks at them, and all those police, they've got guns drawn, looking at him, just looking at his face, and especially with those glasses, like, he looks like a stereotypical serial killer. Like,
right.
It's very unsettling. They did a great job just making him look like that. And then also you just see him like all calm, cool, and collected and everything, and then they slam him on the table, and you just immediately see this like just the reaction on his face of like craziness
Mm-hmm.
in his eyes, and then especially when Batman rolls up and he just gets this big smile on his face, because in his mind, and you see this later in the meeting with him and Batman, he thinks that he's working with Batman. He is that deluded into thinking that they're doing all of this together. And I was also really concerned just because like they start to imply heavily that the Riddler knows who that Batman is Bruce Wayne. They
Yeah.
really start implying that, and I'm like, are we really going to give away his identity in this first film? Are we really
But
doing that?
the way he was doing it, he was like, Bruce
Yeah.
Wayne, like, oh my gosh. And it was just like, he said it over and over again. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, this is obviously being recorded.
Yep.
Like, they got some sort of like recording software and they have cameras in there and they're going to be picking this up. And they don't even mention it at all. It's not going to be like the end of spoilers, one of the Spider-Man movies where Spider-Man, like, who he is, so I'm like, oh, hopefully that's not the way this movie is, but I'm glad they didn't go any further with that.
Yeah, it was nice to finally see the turnaround, because you think with the beginning of the conversation, you think that he knows that Bruce is Batman, but
Mhm.
then you realize it's like, but we didn't get him. He's the only one we didn't get.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize, oh, he still doesn't know. He still doesn't know at all. And he thinks that he's working with Batman. He's just that deluded. And then when he comes to realize that Batman is not about that life, it just completely cracks Riddler's mind. And he gets highly upset. But then he realizes that there's a piece of the puzzle that Batman hasn't figured out yet. And they actually kind of touch on this at the very beginning of the movie, where they touch on the fact that the part of the renewal plan was to developing the seawall, but the money dried up. So the seawall integrity was not finished. They didn't finish it completely. And that's because Falcone and all of these mob guys were siphoning off the renewal money, the $1 billion, and they were all getting a cut of it. So the money dried up for other things, and Riddler exploits that in order to basically clear out the cesspool. The idea was to completely flood the city to the point where they would be at this central point, which was Gotham. Was it Gotham Square?
Gotham Square
Garden or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the point where it would drive everyone there, and then he had followers, which that was really cool. That was very modern. The fact that he had like followers online. He was like on the dark web and had all these guys that were basically coming together to do stuff for him. And they were going to basically take everybody out and clear out the cesspool. And so it was definitely interesting how they did that. And then the ending with Batman finally takes out all these Riddler thugs, if you will.
Gets a shotgun to the chest.
Yeah, and then gives himself a shot of adrenaline.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay. So when I saw that, I'm like, was that Bane, like Venom stuff that he put into him?
Could be.
Like it just came out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, well, he's got some sort of green adrenaline. That sounds like Venom stuff.
It's possible. I mean, it could definitely be a nod to that. It could just be regular old adrenaline. I don't know. I don't know what adrenaline looks like.
It's not that.
I figured it's probably not green like that. But
in the Batman universe, that's the Bane stuff.
Yeah, Venom. Yeah,
the Bane, the quote unquote Bane stuff.
The Bane stuff.
You're the resident Batman fan here. I am not. But
you got it. It's Venom.
Yeah, it definitely looked like it.
Yeah, it could be. It could absolutely be a nod to that. And we could see that down the road. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting. Like with as many shots as Batman took to the chest by like rifle shots and automatic weapon shots, like it figures it's the shotgun that did him in. But yeah, it's interesting. He finally gives himself that adrenaline shot, stops all the Riddler guys. And then he gets this moment where he gets a chance to actually be a hero. He turns
I
from
know.
being just the vigilante who's just out for revenge, out for vengeance. Like this entire movie, they play on that fact that his name, they call him Vengeance in this movie. They're not, half the time they're not calling him Batman. And it really gets on his nerves when he takes that mask off that guy, and I believe that is the same guy from the funeral scene.
It looked like him.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
thought the
pretty
same
sure
one.
that's the same guy that was like really dogging on the rich scumbags and things like that at the funeral scene. It's the same guy that's in the underneath the Riddler mask, and he's like, "I'm vengeance." And Batman turns and looks at him, and he realizes like, the way I'm going, I'm no better than these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really played at like, if you go down this road, you are no better than the criminals. And so that's when Batman's arc finally kind of comes to a conclusion, and that's where he becomes the hero, where he starts actually saving people and helping with rescue efforts for this the flood that's going on. And he finally says, he's like, I am making an impact, not in the way I expected. I needed to become something more than just vengeance, because ultimately that doesn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an interesting arc to me. That we're well on the path to him becoming an actual hero, and more people accepting him as part of Gotham's
Then just
society.
Gordon.
Yeah, more than just Gordon. Um, and so I absolutely love that. But yeah, man, I think we've touched on quite a bit. Was there anything other specific that you wanted to touch on? Any major points? Any?
Yes, there's one other thing I want to discuss,
Okay.
and it is the soundtrack. The theme to this movie was a Nirvana song,
Yeah.
and my favorite band of all time is Nirvana. And when they started the Something in the Way, the new rendition of Something in the Way that was just a little bit slower, and then the whole movie is to that tune,
Yeah.
the Something in the Way, all throughout the movie, which for me made me like the movie even more because it had that Something in the Way, just note after note,
Yeah.
then note, and it was just like so well done the way they just slowed that song down to make it a Batman theme. Like a Nirvana Something in the Way song is the new Batman theme. Like that is insane.
Yeah.
And it was so good throughout the movie. It didn't do like it wasn't the vocals. Like at the beginning it had the vocals, and then the credits, had the vocals. But the throughout the entire movie, it was just the instrumental music to that song. And it was yeah, that was one part that we didn't discuss throughout our spoiler cast, but the music was amazing.
Yeah, I loved the incorporation of like, especially that song was written out of a place for Kurt Cobain of like isolation and depression and things like that, and that's very much the kind of the where Bruce is at, where
Yeah.
Batman is, and so it makes sense. Um, Michael Giaccino, the guy that did all the score for this movie,
Mm.
did a fantastic job with all of the music. Just very, I love Batman's theme. I love Riddler's theme, like the very like kind of unnerving and but very playful kind of theme to it. He did a great job with this. The score was fantastic.
Score was one of the best scores I've heard
Yeah,
in any comic book movie.
yeah, definitely, absolutely, I agree with you. All right, man. All hearts clear. Otherwise,
All hearts clear.
awesome, awesome.
I am done.
I'm finished. But yeah, so that's pretty much all we've got there for our Batman spoiler cast. Absolutely love this movie. I highly recommend. I think we both highly recommend you go see it. Go
Yes.
see it in the theater if you can, or on HBO Max when it comes out. But definitely go see it as soon as you can. This fantastic movie, definitely beautiful, dark noirish take on the Batman. Very well written. Absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but guys, thank you so much for listening to us. You can always listen to the regular episodes of the Good Morning Guys podcast wherever podcasts are available. We also have other spoiler casts as well that you can listen to. But that's all for this this Batman spoiler cast. So may God guide and bless. The other way. Bless and guide your lives. See, Lucas does it better than I do.
It's so much better.
Yep. May God bless and guide your lives as you live, as you work, and as you game, and as you find justice.
Justice and vengeance.